My thanks to Bring Me to Life Radio, and welcome to the Cinema Scribe. The American dream of living a life of freedom is as old as the days of the Founding Fathers. Yet for many years after the Revolution and the establishment of the new Republic, one segment of society was always left out of such self-evident blessings. The nation's slave population languished in an unending cycle of forced servitude, unable to break free, except, of course, for a few courageous souls who defied the odds and escaped their circumstances. The inspiring story of one enslaved woman who did just that, and then went on to help many others suffering similar circumstances, provides the basis for the new historic biopic, Harriet. In Dorchester County, Maryland, in 1849, 27-year-old Araminta Minty Ross, played by Cynthia Erivo, lives the life of a slave on the plantation of Edward Brodess, played by Michael Marunde. Having been born into slavery as the daughter of Rit Ross, played by Vanessa Bell Calloway, it's the only life she's ever known. However, she now seeks to change that by pleading her case for freedom, based on a pledge by Mr. Brodess's grandfather, who promised Rit that she and her offspring would be freed from their forced servitude upon reaching a certain age, a milestone that has long since passed. What's more, Minty has recently married a free black man, John Tubman, played by Zachary Momo, with whom she'd like to share the legal liberation he enjoys, something they could also pass on to any children they might have. After making their case to Edward with the assistance of Minty's father, Ben, played by Clark Peters, also a free black man, Minty and John are summarily turned down. Brodess flatly says he has no intention of honoring his grandfather's agreement, and that Minty, like her mother, will forever remain a slave, despite his ancestors' pledge, and despite her marriage to a free man. Needless to say, Minty is dejected, but she is also resolute to seek her freedom, contending that it's immoral for one person to own another. The path to such a result is sure to be difficult, but she's committed to find it one way or another, no matter what it takes. Shortly thereafter, however, Minty's plan runs into a major hurdle. Edward dies unexpectedly, leaving his wife Eliza, played by Jennifer Nettles, and son Gideon, played by Joe Alwyn, with a pile of unpaid debts. Also, given that the farm is not faring as well as expected, the surviving Brodesses are faced with having to raise cash to stay afloat, an objective they hope to achieve by selling off some of their assets, namely, slaves like Minty, for whom they believe they'll be able to fetch a good price. Minty is terrified at the prospect, believing that she'll be sold off and sent down south, keeping her from seeing John and her family members ever again. So, with such a possibility looming, she decides to run. Minty meets with her pastor, Reverend Samuel Green, played by Vondi Curtis Hall, for guidance. He instructs Minty to head north to Pennsylvania, a free state in which she can lead a comparatively less restricted life. In particular, he tells her to head to Philadelphia, an oasis for free blacks and escaped slaves, and to contact the head of the Pennsylvania Anti-Slavery Society, William Still, played by Leslie Odom Jr., who can help her make a new life for herself. But first she has to get there, an arduous 100-mile journey filled with peril, pursuers, and many hardships, all to be accomplished on foot, mostly at night, through the wilderness. Despite the odds, Minty succeeds in her journey, reaching Philadelphia and meeting Mr. Still. He subsequently introduces her to Marie Buchanan, played by Janelle Monáe, a free black woman who owns a boarding house for escaped slaves. Marie gives her residents a place to stay and food to eat, as well as assistance in finding paid employment, something Minty has never experienced. She thus quietly settles into her new life as a free person. In addition to providing help with everyday considerations, Mr. Still also keeps detailed records about the lives and experiences of the escapees. He chronicles their lives and their paths to freedom, compiling a sort of database about his constituents. In taking down Minty's information, he learns that she suffered a severe head injury in her youth, one that subsequently prompted her to have visions and vivid dreams, episodes that she believes are communications with God. Mr. Still is somewhat skeptical, chalking up her descriptions of these events to possible brain damage. But Minty is convinced it's divine inspiration, something that she claims has helped guide her more than a few times, especially during her flight to freedom. She considers this ability a valuable gift for living, one she will come to draw upon many times as she moves forward in life. Of course, no new beginning would be complete without some kind of gesture to signify its inception. To that end, Mr. Still asked Minty if she would like to take a new name for herself, one of her choosing that suits her desires and celebrates her freedom, and that can help to conceal her true identity from hunters tracking down runaway slaves. She thus chooses one that's a combination of her mother's birth name and her own married name, and it's with that Harriet Tubman is born. After about a year, though, Harriet finds herself lonely, longing to be with her husband John. She contemplates going back to Maryland to retrieve him so that they can live together in freedom, a plan Mr. Still strongly discourages due to the dangers involved. He warns her that aggrieved slave owners, like her own former master Gideon Brodess, are growing more aggressive in their efforts to recover their property, hiring opportunistic free black bounty hunters like Bigger Long, played by Omar J. Dorsey, and informants like a shady character named Walter, played by Henry Hunter Hall, to assist them. However, being resolved to be with John, Harriet forges ahead with her plan, successfully making her way back to Dorchester County. Unfortunately, upon arrival, Harriet receives some distressing news. Having heard stories that she was killed during her flight to freedom, John believed that she was dead, and he subsequently remarried, with his new wife now expecting. Consequently, he can't bring himself to leave her. Though devastated by this revelation, Harriet comes to a startling realization. Events have unfolded as they have because God must have summoned her to a higher calling, that of helping others escape and shepherding them to freedom. She thus decides to help a group of family members make their flight north, a venture in which she succeeds without losing a single soul. Harriet's efforts impress Mr. Still so much that he recommends her to become a member of the Underground Railroad, a covert network of conductors who help slaves escape captivity by stealthily leading them from one clandestine safe house to another from the American South to the northern U.S. or southern Canada. It was an effort that earned Harriet her legacy as one of the greatest heroes in American history. Harriet never would have achieved what she did, however, were it not for her unrelenting fearlessness, her steely resolve, and her unswerving adherence to the principles of individual freedom and the abolition of forced servitude. This idealism, fortified by a hefty infusion of personal integrity, drove her forward in her efforts, making their realization possible. She firmly believed in her views and herself, a virtually unbeatable combination when it came to the manifestation of her initiatives. Of course, Harriet was not alone when it came to formulating her plans and strategies. She had, or believed she had, divine inspiration on her side to guide her. Whether Harriet was actually speaking to God is open to speculation, but the concept of receiving enlightened guidance is certainly not in doubt. After all, we all have access to our intuition, that indefinable feeling-based knowing in whose validity we have absolute faith, no matter how unusual it may seem. Harriet may well have had this at her disposal, even if she didn't recognize it as such or call it by that name. What's most important, though, is that she trusted it implicitly, convinced that it would never steer her wrong. And the result is that such reliance served to bolster her confidence in achieving the results she sought. The world is certainly a better place, even today, for having had someone like Harriet as part of its history, culture, and legacy. someone who epitomized these values in their most important and inspired embodiments. While the storytelling approach employed in Harriet is rather safe and formulaic, director Casey Lemons' heroic biopic nevertheless delivers an inspiring tale of a courageous soul who successfully helped liberate an oppressed people. Erivo delivers a knockout, award-worthy performance as the celebrated title character, backed by a fine ensemble cast of supporting players, all of whom are situated within a fine period piece production design. Admittedly, the dialogue is a tad preachy at times, and the film's overdramatic soundtrack frequently overpowers the mood of many scenes. However, for those seeking uplifting viewing options, especially those that would appeal to impressionable young women, this tribute to Harriet Tubman is well worth the time. Despite its many fine attributes, however, Harriet has come under attack for some of its historical accuracy. Yet viewers must remember that this is a biopic, a film based on historical events, not a literal documentation of the character's life and times. What's more, given that some aspects of Harriet's life are difficult to pinpoint, some gaps had to be filled in with speculation about what may have happened. And it's on those points that the picture makes some educated guesses, some plausible, some less likely. Those interested in this subject should check out an excellent new Slate magazine article by Rochelle Hampton, What's Fact and What's Fiction in Harriet. The hunger for freedom is one that's difficult to satisfy, especially when it's being starved of sustenance. But it's under circumstances like that when we're most motivated to keep persevering to obtain what we seek. Harriet's story provides us with a shining example of what to do and how to proceed when we have nothing left to lose and everything to gain. I'm Brent Marchant, the Cinema Scribe. Thanks for listening.
A lifelong movie fan and longtime student of metaphysics, Cinema Scribe Brent Marchant is the award-winning author of Get the Picture, Conscious Creation Goes to the Movies, Consciously Created Cinema, The Movie Lover's Guide to the Law of Attraction, and Third Reel Conscious Creation Goes Back to the Movies, all of which provide reader-friendly looks at how the practice of conscious creation, also known as the Law of Attraction, is illustrated through film. Brett maintains an ongoing blog about metaphysical cinema and other self-empowerment topics through his website, www.brentmarchant.com. He's also the movie correspondent for The Good Radio Network and New Consciousness Review Magazine and Radio, with additional writing contributions to Smart Women's Empowerment, The Happy Guide, Library Journal, BeliefNet, Vivid Life, New Age News, and Master Heart Magazine. Brett holds a BA in Magazine Journalism and History from Syracuse University. Again, check him out at www.brentmarchant.com.